Welcome, my friends, and let me regale you with a tale of love's unexpected twists and turns, where a dashing billionaire's path intertwines with that of a kind-hearted beauty. Enjoy the story. It was just another day in the fast-paced life of billionaire bachelor John Wentworth, as his sleek black Porsche zoomed down Fifth Avenue. The dashing 40-year-old tech tycoon had it all: rugged good looks, more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes, and a never-ending string of gorgeous women on his arm. But true love? That still eluded him, especially after his cheating ex-wife broke his heart. Lost in thought, John barely noticed the young woman who suddenly darted in front of his speeding car, scooping up a helpless kitten about to become roadkill. He slammed on the brakes with seconds to spare as the mystery girl cradled the mewing feline, her eyes wide with fear. "Are you insane? I could have killed you!" John shouted, leaping out to confront the jaywalker. But his anger melted as he gazed into her luminous green eyes. She was breathtaking, with flowing chestnut hair and delicate features that made his pulse race. "I'm so sorry, but I couldn't let the poor thing die," she said softly, stroking the purring kitten. "I'm Emily Rose." "John Wentworth," he replied, finding himself smiling. "Can I give you a ride somewhere? Make sure you're okay?" "That would be wonderful, thank you," Emily said shyly as she climbed into the Porsche, still clutching her feline friend. As John drove her to the humble flower shop where she worked, the two chatted like old friends, discovering a mutual love of nature, classic literature, and rescuing animals. By the time he dropped her off, John knew one thing for certain: he had to see this captivating woman again. Over the next month, John courted Emily with a passion he had never felt before. He sent her lavish bouquets from her shop each morning and whisked her away to 5-star dinners each night. Emily was like a breath of fresh air, so different from the jaded socialites and gold diggers who usually threw themselves at him. With her sweet smile and generous heart, she saw the man beneath the money. "I think you're falling for her," warned John's best friend and business partner Max one day over cigars and scotch. "How well do you really know this girl? She could be playing you." "You're wrong about Emily," John insisted, a dreamy look in his eyes. "She's not like Veronica or the others. When I'm with her, I'm just John, not some walking bank account." As the weeks flew by, John grew more certain that Emily was the one. On a moonlit stroll through Central Park, he dropped to one knee and presented her with a flawless 10-carat diamond. "My darling Emily, I never believed in soulmates until the day you crashed into my life," he said, voice thick with emotion. "You've brought me more joy than all the wealth in the world ever could. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Tears streaming down her face, Emily nodded and threw her arms around him. "Yes, 1,000 times yes," she cried, as John slipped the ring on her trembling finger. "I love you, John Wentworth, and I always will." The Wentworth Rose wedding was the social event of the season, with no expense spared. Emily was resplendent in a custom Vera Wang gown as she floated down the aisle of St. Patrick's Cathedral on her beaming father's arm. John thought his heart would burst with love and pride as he watched his bride approach. This was what happily ever after felt like. For the next 5 years, the newlyweds savored a storybook romance. Their Upper East Side penthouse was filled with laughter, especially after the arrival of their son Alexander. With his father's chiseled jaw and his mother's emerald eyes, little Alex was the light of their lives. Emily proved to be a devoted wife and mother, volunteering with children's charities and turning their house into a warm, welcoming home. But then John began to notice some changes in his once openly affectionate wife. Emily started taking secretive phone calls and disappearing for hours at a time, always with a vague excuse about meeting a girlfriend for lunch or shopping. At first, John tried to shrug it off, not wanting to come across as a possessive husband. But ugly memories of Veronica's infidelity began to surface. Was Emily cheating on him too? Desperate for answers, John made a call he never thought he'd make. "Nate, it's John," he said to the grizzled private eye who had caught Veronica red-handed. "I need you to tail Emily, find out where she's sneaking off to, but be discreet." For the next week, John was a nervous wreck as he waited for Nate's report, A part of him prayed that Emily would prove as virtuous and true as he had always believed. But his fears and doubts grew by the day, especially when his wife continued to evade his questions. What was she hiding? Late one evening, Nate called John and asked to meet at once. With a heavy heart, John drove to the detective's smoke-filled office, steeling himself for the worst. "Just give it to me straight," he said as he collapsed into a chair. "Is Emily having an affair?" Nate stubbed out his cigarette and sighed. "No, it's not what you think," he said, tossing a folder on the desk. "Your wife has been visiting a rundown house in Queens. Belongs to a Clara Rose, Emily's maternal grandmother." Stunned, John opened the file and found photos of Emily helping a frail elderly woman in and out of the dilapidated home, carrying groceries and medication. "I don't understand," he said, studying his wife's concerned expression in the snapshots. "Why would Emily hide this from me?" "Near as I can figure, the old lady is broke and sick," Nate explained. "No other family to care for her. Seems Emily has been looking after her on the sly. May be ashamed to tell you given your fortune. Guess she didn't want you to think less of her people." John felt like he had been punched in the gut. His sweet Emily had a heart big enough to encompass the world, yet he had doubted her, suspected the worst. What kind of husband did that make him? He had to make this right. The next day, John took off work and followed Emily to Queens, his stomach in knots. He watched from afar as she entered her grandmother's house, then finally worked up the nerve to knock on the door. A shocked Emily answered, her eyes widening at the sight of him. "John, what are you doing here?" she gasped. "I could ask you the same thing," he said gently, taking her hands. "Oh, Emily, I've been such a fool. I thought you were being unfaithful, so I had you followed. I'm so ashamed I didn't trust you. Can you ever forgive me?" Emily's eyes filled with tears as she pulled him close. "Forgive you? Darling, I'm the one who should beg your forgiveness for my deception," she whispered. "I was just so afraid you'd be ashamed of my poor sick grandma. I didn't want to lose you." "Lose me? Never," John vowed, cupping her face. "You're my world, Emily Rose Wentworth. You and Alex and this family we've built, and that includes Clara now too." Hand in hand, Emily led John inside the faded little house to meet her grandmother. Over tea and Clara's famous blueberry scones, the Wentworths forged a new bond, with John insisting that Clara come live with them so Emily could care for her full time. For the first time, he felt that his immense wealth had a truly meaningful purpose. 5 years later, the Wentworth sprawling estate in Bedford, New York, rang with the sounds of laughter and joy. Now 10, Alex loved zooming around the grounds on his dirt bike, with Grandpa George and Uncle Max in hot pursuit. In the airy kitchen, Emily and her mother Jeannie shared recipes and family stories handed down for generations. And in the sun-dappled living room, John sat with Clara, hanging on the family matriarch's every word as she reminisced about her late husband and their early days as young sweethearts. Though frail at 85, Clara's eyes still sparkled with wit and wisdom. "You know, Johnny, when my Emily first brought you around, I wasn't sure what to make of you," Clara confessed with a wry smile. "Thought you might be one of those rich fellas with no time for us little folks." "I'm ashamed to say you weren't entirely wrong," John admitted. "There was a time I let my suspicions get the better of me, doubted Emily's motives. But loving her, building this family together, .. taught me what really matters in this life." "She's a special girl, my Emmy," Clara said fondly. "Big-hearted, just like her grandpa. In a world full of takers, she's a giver through and through." John nodded, gazing out the window to where Emily was now chasing Alex and Max with a water gun, her laughter carrying on the warm breeze. "She certainly is," he agreed. "And I'll spend the rest of my days trying to be worthy of her love." That evening, as the sun dipped low over the hills, the extended Wentworth Rose clan gathered around the outdoor dining table for a feast of Clara's famous fried chicken and Jeannie's prize-winning apple pie. Clinking his glass, John stood to offer a toast. "To family," he said, eyes shining with emotion. "To the people who teach us how to love unconditionally, who see the best in us even when we can't see it in ourselves, and who remind us each and every day just how blessed we are. To family, the others echoed, smiling at one another with deep affection. As John looked around at the faces of his loved ones, his beaming wife, his tow-headed son, his warm new in-laws, and the grandmother who had welcomed him without judgment, he realized that he was the richest man in the world. Not because of the billions in his bank accounts or the companies in his portfolio, but because of the priceless treasure of this quirky, loving, utterly irreplaceable family. And to think it had all started with a stray kitten and a girl with a heart of gold. Funny how fate worked sometimes. But as John pulled Emily close and felt her contented sigh, he knew one thing for certain. He would never doubt his incredible luck or his wife's love again. Come what may, the Wentworths would face it as they did everything, together,